They informed the expedition that it was not possible. There could not be such a creature. 3 weeks later, the head researcher disappeared in the Gobi Desert. His last radio transmission? It's real, it's static. We've put flags on the moon, rovers on Mars, in the Mariana Trench, submarines. Satellites can be used to follow a single penguin in Antarctica. But there is a kind of animal here in this world that we cannot locate. Not extinct, not imaginary, just invisible. The villages were constructed around their presence, those hunters that have had them at hand. Prints not found anywhere in our databases. Scientists are jittery about hair samples. Stories of dozens of witnesses telling the same across the generations, across the borders without meeting each other. 6 creatures, 6 empty spaces in our life encyclopedia. 6 mysteries that threaten our technology and make us question all that we believe is possible. The hunt begins now. 1. Mongolian death worm. Imagine you are walking over the Gobi Desert. Sand extends out to the horizon. The leader of your party suddenly stops, looking at the floor. Olgoy korkoy, he whispers. The intestine worm. Mongolian locals are talking of an animal that does not sound possible. A worm 1/2 meter to 1 meter in length, of blood red, fat like a cow's intestine. Certainly living under the blazing Gobi sands. But here's where it gets wild. This thing doesn't just bite. It has the power to spray a venom that kills, according to the nomad accounts that were gathered over several generations. And in some stories, it is capable of producing electric shock that is strong in killing a camel. From a distance. Sound like fantasy? The regularity of such reports is disturbing. The same creature is described in different villages, which are hundreds of miles apart. Same color, same behavior, same deadly capabilities. It was first reported in the 1920s by Western explorers. The tales were recorded by Roy Chapman Andrews, the archetypal adventurer of Indiana Jones. Czech cryptozoologist Ivan Mackerel later spent years on the hunt, interviewing dozens of witnesses. In the 2000s, the Center for Fortean Zoology made expeditions. They found nothing. No bodies, no skin, no bones, not even a photograph. But the Gobi is unforgiving. The temperatures vary between -40 degrees Celsius and 40 degrees Celsius, summer and winter respectively. The sand shifts constantly. The animal is said to inhabit the earth only coming up during the days of the hottest months. Scientists assume that it could be a misidentified worm snake or death adder. Possibly the electric shock was an exaggerated venom pain. But the herdsmen who are there, centuries. They are familiar with the local wildlife, and they demand this is something different. The Mongolian death worm is out there hanging somewhere under the moving sands. In fact, or fiction, no one has been able to prove it. The hunt takes us from scorching deserts to steaming jungles. Our next creature isn't hiding in sand, it's watching from the trees. Dua orang pendek. There is an Indonesian proverb that says, "Jangan masuk hutan sendirian." Don't go into the forest alone. In the darkest clouds of Sumatra, there is a 2-legged walker. Nor is it quite ape and quite human. Something the natives call orang pendek, short person. There is a bipedal primate that has been described to be 80 to 150 centimeters tall, as described by witnesses. Covered in short, dark fur, strongly constructed with a swelling belly. Not knuckle walking like familiar apes, but walking erectly with a peculiar type of gait. And this is what makes orang pendek distinguish among the rest of the cryptids. This one leaves a trace. Footprints, hair samples, again and again, the eyewitness of the native tribes and the contemporary scientists. Deborah Martyr, a British explorer, spent 15 years of her life in Sumatra hunting this animal. In 2009, a team led by researcher Richard Freeman photographed footprints which did not fit any known creature. Short, broad feet with widely spread big toes. Hair samples under analysis possess abnormal properties. Not orangutan, not gibbon, not any catalogued primate. Unconclusive, yet interesting. The uniformity is very persuasive. The descriptions of orang pendek do not vary between decades or villages, unlike other ambiguous monster stories. Same height, same behavior, same habitat. Is it possible that it is misidentified? Out of a habit, sun bears also stand erect. Young orangutans were interchangeable at a distance. However, locals differentiate mawas, orangutan, siamang, gibbon, and orang pendek. It has been speculated by some scientists that it may be an unknown primate or even a relict population of Homo floresiensis, the hobbits of nearby Flores Island. The jungle in Sumatran is impassable, thick canopy, difficult terrain. It is easy to imagine a nocturnal population of primates with timid traits going undetected. Orang pendek is also an elusive, more plausible than most cryptids. Nevertheless, as there is no body or clear footage on it, it remains in between legend and reality. With moist jungles we pass away to lazy Indian valleys where some old beast may have gone before we were born to be mindful of its existence. 3. Buru. The Apatani people of Arunachal Pradesh, India, have an account of creation of a monster who is said to have become extinct even before anybody could record the creature. The Apatani of the Zero Valley in the east of the Himalayas also recount the story of the Buru, huge water reptiles which haunted the marshes and springs that blanketed the valley floor. The descriptions are vivid. Crocodile-like creatures, long snouts, dark blue skin, reaching a length of 4 meters. The Buru would pull the animals to water to instill the fear atmosphere. The Apatani, as it is traditional, organized a coordinated attack. They cleared the swamps, making the wet land into terraced rice field. Buru, without a home, were killed or drove out. The final appearances were claimed to be many generations back. These were recorded by British colonial administrators in the 1940s. Detailed accounts were made by some of the older Apatani by ethnographer Christoph von Führer-Heimendorf, whose grandparents had themselves taken part in the last hunts. There is no bodily evidence, however. No bones, no specimens, nothing but oral history and a remodeled valley. According to the skeptics, it is mythology, a story of the foundation on which Apatani emptied the marshes. All societies have dragon myths. However, there is something interesting that believers observe. The descriptions are definite and uniform. They do not correspond to Hindu and Buddhist mythological animals. They are like an eyewitness testimony to actual animals. Other researchers indicate that the Buru might have been gharials, or some species of unknown aquatic reptile. Unless fictitious, the destruction of habitats presumably killed it before it could be studied by scientists. The Buru is a sign of the haunting, cryptids which vanish before we can demonstrate their existence. A way to mankind development, their mystery to the grave. Although the Buru disappeared on the mainland, our second animal is continuing to terrorize the heavens of distant African swamps, so locals say. 4. Kongamado. In the first half of the 20th century, when missionaries came to Central Africa, they carried books with dinosaur pictures. As soon as they demonstrated them to the people in the Zambezi area and swamps of Angola, something odd occurred. Huge bones that were the pterosaurs were indicated and said, "We know that one. That's the Kongamado." The Kongamado, or conqueror of boats, is said to have been a reddish, leathery-winged, long-beaked, featherless bird. The wingpan has an estimate of 4 to 7 feet. It is known to descend on fishermen, attacking the canoes and tearing nets. In 1923, explorer Frank Mellon passed through Zambia around Jundu swamps, as locals informed him that there was a dangerous flying creature that was near the swamp. They were able to identify a pterosaur with great confidence when presented with images of other animals. In 1932, a man by the name of Hedman said that he had been assaulted by a giant winged animal. On the illustrations displayed, he indicated a pterodactyl. Possible survival of pterosaurs 65 million years? Difficult, practically to say the least. The asteroid collision brought about the devastating climatic conditions. The discovery of 0 fossils during the 65 million years past implies total extinction. So what are people seeing? The obvious solution is large birds. The African fish eagle measures 2 meters in its wingspan. The shoebill stork resembles prehistoric with its huge beak. The giant fruit bats might be pterosaur-like in bad light. But there are witnesses who say that they are not birds or bats. They talk of skin of reptiles, not of feathers and fur. There is still room to be wrong about the wetlands and limited scientific surveying taking place in the region. But to have a living pterosaur would need a remarkable testimony. The Congamato is as certainly a cryptid. The thing may exist in theory, but is highly unlikely in practice. We quit the swamps of Africa to the snowy mountains of Europe, where something quite different has long troubled the villages of the mountains. Fünfter Tatzelwurm. In the Alps, where snow sticks to the jagged peaks and mist drifts in the valleys, Swiss and Austrian shepherds are telling the tales of the one before their great-great-grandparents. Tales of the Tatzelwurm, the claw worm. This cryptid is weird. It has a serpentine body, a head of a cat, 4 or 2 short legs, and all scales. This is between 30 centimeters and 2 meters in size. It allegedly inhabits caves and crevices made of rocks above the tree line. The name changes by region. Stollenwurm in Bavaria, Bergstutzen in Switzerland. Nevertheless, descriptions are shockingly consistent across the borders. Reports go back to hundreds of years ago. 2 Tatzelwurms were supposedly spotted by Swiss man Hans Fuchs in 1779, whereupon he died of shock. One was allegedly discovered by a farmer in 1828. Sightings of the object remained intermittent but constant throughout the 1800s and 1900s. One of the most renowned pieces of evidence is a low-resolution photo, 1934, allegedly depicting one on the edge of Lake Geneva. No longer than too doubtful to show anything, but it was the stuff of decades of conjecture. Modern explanations? The large snakes such as European adders have no legs. There may be otters, snack-like in their movement, and short-legged, at least spotted in a quick glance in the dim. The deformed animals had the ability to produce shock. The alpine folklore is filled with the dragon imagery. The Tatzelwurm must have been a natural result of this cultural mush, a mixture of actual animal experiences and archetypal monsters. Nonetheless, people continue to report seeing it. Encounters were alleged in the 1980s. In the 2000s, one woman claimed that she had seen one. The Alps are vast and rugged. There are mountains which are honeycombed with unexplored caves. A little, withdrawn reptile community may hypothetically go through unnoticed. The Tatzelwurm takes up a special position of its own, too particular to be mere myth, too indefinable to be established as real. Out of the alpine mountains, we pass down to murky waters of Australia, and there, thousands of years, have the oldest and possibly the most culturally important cryptid of all. 6. Bunyip. Indigenous peoples had narratives before the white ships arrived at the Australian shores. Several thousand years of tales. Of the worst feared was the bunyip. The bunyip cannot be pegged down since it is transformative. It is defined differently by different Aboriginal nations. Others say that it looks like a large seal that has a head of a dog. Others are talking of a huge starfish. Others still are talking of a thing with tusks and flippers and a tail of a horse. What remains consistent? It inhabits waterholes, billabongs, rivers, and swamps. It's dangerous. And it is a lesson. Watch your step upon deep water at night. These stories were heard by European settlers when they came in the 1800s and became obsessed. This was an unusual skull that was exhibited in the Australian Museum and marked as a bunyip skull in 1847. People flocked to see it. Panic spread. The skull was of a deformed horse or cow as later determined. Additional evidence came out over decades. Footprints, roars heard across lakes, witnesses who testified they had observed huge dark entities in water. What's really going on? The bunyip must have been a symbol of various things. The purpose of Aboriginal water spirits was practical. They were used to keep children out of dangerous waterholes where crocodiles lived. The fossils of diprotodons could have been confused with monsters by the European settlers who had not encountered fossils of Australian megafauna. False identifications of animals are likely to explain some of the sightings. Sometimes seals are taken inland along rivers. Big Murray cod measure more than a meter. The swimming of emus is really strange at a distance. But the bunyip does not just misidentify itself. It is part of the Australian culture and reflects the threat and enigma of the Australian wilderness. The National Museum of Australia approaches the bunyip as both folklore tradition and possible natural history conundrum. According to Aboriginal elders, other bunyip stories are only the spiritual teachings, whereas others may be related to the actual animals that their ancestral people had an encounter with. The bunyip is the most popular cryptid in existence today in Australia. It is written in children's books, horror movies, and tourist parks. The truth? The bunyip probably isn't one thing. It's the collective result of ancient stories, real animal encounters, fossil discoveries, and human fear of what lurks beneath dark water. And that makes it more fascinating than any single undiscovered species ever could be. 6 creatures, 6 mysteries, 6 reasons to doubt what we believe to know about our planet. The death worms in the Gobi electrocuting their prey in Mongolia, orang pendek strolling erectly in the Sumatran jungles, the disappearance of the buru before science had them on paper, the Kongamato frightening fishermen of leathery wings, the tatzelworm in the alpine caves, and the bunyip, guardian of the water in Australia. Others would be false identifications. Some might be pure folklore, but there are a few, just possibly there are a few, actual species there waiting to be brought to light. And by that, in case this made you think, like that and subscribe. Add a comment to explain which of the cryptids you think in the most. And bear in mind, no evidence is evidence against. The world still has secrets. Let's find them together.